Hey everybody, this is Keith from Indie Comics Relay with my good friend and co-host.
Hey everybody, Johnny C. How's it going?
We haven't quite worked out our retort yet.
Yeah.
and with us this week on Indie Comics Relay, we got David Lucarelli.
Hey guys,
Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. And Dave, tell our audience a little bit which comic that you put out and produce.
Sure. So I'm the writer of Tinseltown, which is a period crime drama. It's about one of the first female police officers in Hollywood. So it's set in 1915. It's kind of like LA Confidential meets Boardwalk Empire. And in real life, my mother was a police officer for almost 20 years in Pittsburgh. So it's also kind of my tribute to her.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that a little bit. It looks like we already got one comment here. Let's see.
Yeah, thank you.
Love Tinseltown. That's awesome. There we go. So hopefully we'll have more people joining as we go. But anyways, I've read Tinseltown, and I do think that it is one of the best comics that Alterna has put out to date.
Thank you.
Like you said, I do like the noir nature of it, and I do love that it's like a tribute to your mother. I think that's great. And the characters are awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I know you have a second miniseries coming out, right?
I do, yeah. So the second miniseries is going to be 5 issues coming out bi-monthly. It's called Tinseltown Losing the Light. And so basically there's an in-between story called Pinboy, which is already came out in an issue that came out on a Wednesday. It's the one with the green monster on the cover. So that kind of ties, ties the transition between the end of the first graphic novel and the beginning of the next one.
Do you know what issue number that is? If it came out on a Wednesday?
I don't have it right in front of me. I think it's the one before the current issue, maybe the one that just came out.
Okay.
So it's got a green monster on it. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we can dig it up later and put it on the screen.
Yeah. So anyhow, that introduces a new character that's going to be an important part of Tinseltown Losing the Light. And Tinseltown Losing the Light is really, Abby has recovered from her injuries that she's sustained. She's back on the lot, and there's been a series of mysterious accidents happening on the lot. And at the same time, over in Europe, World War I is raging, although the United States hasn't officially joined yet. And that's going to be that's happening in the background and going to become increasingly important as the series goes on.
Oh, cool. So now do you have, so this will be the second miniseries. It's going to be what, 5 issues?
5 issues, yeah.
5 issues. I know. Do you have designs on doing more beyond this?
Definitely, yeah. If people, keep buying it and people want more, I'd love to do more. Because, she still hasn't officially joined the LAPD yet, right? She's still working as kind of a quasi security guard / entertainer to amuse the tourists on the Utopia Studios lot, which was inspired actually by real life circumstances. That's kind of what some of the first female police officers in Los Angeles were essentially security guards on the Universal Studios lot that were in that position. And actually, in doing research for Tinseltown Losing the Light, I found out that that was not the only silent film studio that had female police officers. So D.W. Griffith's studio also had something like that. And the reason was, they were making all of these movies, and they were, they had all these extras they were bringing in every day, and actors and actresses. And in some sense, they were also kind of acting as school marms to make sure that nobody got up to any hanky-panky in the shadows, in between shots and things like that.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, I love that it's got kind of like it's loosely based on real life. I love that about it.
Yeah, in fact, it's interesting. You know, I did some research at the Los Angeles Police Museum, and the uniforms that the Universal Studios female police officers wore actually looked more authentic than the ones that the LAPD female police officers wore, because they there was no budget to make uniforms for them, so they were kind of just like left to make their own uniforms, and they looked kind of almost more like tan military fatigues that they had hand sewn, versus the uniforms that they were wearing on the Universal Studios lot. You know, they had a costume department. They could make them look more like what a real police officer was wearing.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's really fascinating. Actually, it's good. It's cool that you found that niche to kind of tap into that. I don't think there's like many stories like this. You know what I mean? That's what that's what makes it kind of unique. And, you know, and your art, the artist that you have on the book is really good.
Yeah, Henry Ponciano. He's he lives in the Philippines, and we've been working together on various projects for about 6 years now. So yeah, it's really a great creative partnership. The other book that we have done together before and during Tinseltown is we did Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade, which is kind of coming of age gothic adventure, like a punk rock Buffy set in Scotland. And there's 3 volumes of that are out too. Yeah, so, and we've done a couple other short stories and anthologies and things too.
So one thing I wanted to mention about his artwork is that I believe it was on page 98.
Okay.
When Abigail is, well, it's actually a twist. I don't want to spoil anything for any readers, but when Abigail's emerging from the water, I'll just say that.
Okay.
That whole scene, the artwork, I had flashes and flavors of a Steve Dillon, almost preacher kind of that kind of vibe, and I loved it.
Okay.
I thought it was so cool. I love that a lot. So much so that I just made a note of the page number.
Oh yeah.
And I was just like, oh, this is too cool. It's very much like Dillon's artwork, and I love Steve Dillon as an artist too. I have a tattoo of his art, of his version of Frank Castle on me. So it's just I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, you know what's funny about that scene is Peter and I actually had a big argument about it, that it wasn't the most realistic scene in the world, in the sense that, and I don't want to give the twist away, but Abby should be in shock, and, you know, she shouldn't be able to find the perfect dramatic words to say, you know, and my argument was, though, that it works in the context of the comic. I said, you know, some people may be turned off by it, but I guarantee you it's going to be some people's favorite scene in the whole book.
And it really was, though. That's the thing of it, is that it wasn't. It felt like you were going for a certain level of realism, but that moment elevated the character so much from, you know, just a character possibly based on somebody in real life to almost like comic book character, over the top, like Sarah Connor, Ripley from Aliens, kind of like badass. You know, it is. I love that.
It's a defining moment for the character, for sure. It says a lot about her in terms of the way that she reacts to what's happened. And so, yeah, I stood my ground.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. It really, it did wonders for the character. I mean, just now hearing that, you know, Abigail's story is going to continue, I'm really excited to read more, for sure, you know?
Yeah. I actually did more research for the second one than I, like a lot more research. I took like walking tours of historic old Hollywood, and I read any number of books. You know, because there is kind of, without giving too much of the plot away, there's kind of an espionage aspect to this story too. So I wanted to make sure that part was going to be as accurate as possible too.
Yeah, and then was it in the 50s where they got into like the blacklisting and all that? Are you gonna maybe touch on that at some point, you think?
Maybe. You know, if I did that, and I do actually have an idea for that, it would probably be the last Tinseltown story, because by that time she would be old enough, she would be retired, you know, but she probably would have become a private detective at some point in between being a member of the LAPD, and then she would have gotten called out of retirement one last time.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be awesome, actually.
Very cool.
So how long have you been making comics, Dave?
Let's see. I guess it's been about 6 years now, 7 years. I don't know. It's all a blur. You know, the first thing I did was Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade, and we did 2 graphic novels there, which I should say I have my own Etsy store up and running now. So if you go to Etsy and you search for Abacab Studios, like the Genesis song, that'll come up. You can get the Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade, you know, autographed copies of Tinseltown. And we got some other cool stuff too. We got like these pins that are available.
Look it up right now.
Some
cool. That's awesome. I need that badge. I need to get that badge. That's awesome.
Well, the badge is number 226, and which was actually my mom's police badge number 2. So
very cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
did you have some questions?
I was just gonna say, I guess what motivated you to start writing comics? What's your origin story?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been into comics as a medium my whole life, as far back as I can remember. You know, there were 2 stores on the corner around the block from where I grew up that, you know, were ma and pop grocery stores, but they had comics in the back, you know, and some of them were like have the covers cut off and they were half price and things like that. But and yeah, as far back as I can remember, I was going to my first comics convention. Back then, it wasn't necessarily just comics, but it was sci-fi, horror comics and stuff, like in the 2nd grade, I think. I've always been a writer, you know, but I kind of focused my creativity for a number of years more, playing in a band, writing songs, things like that. And then I had a few short stories published, but I got to the point where I was a father and I was married, and I thought to myself, well, I don't want to like get a record deal and go on tour and abandon my family now, but I still want to express myself creatively, and I certainly on my bucket list is to write some comics.
Oh, okay.
And it kind of led you to that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So a couple of things I noticed when I was reading Tinseltown, and I don't know if you intended to do this, but I'm going to kind of bring you through some of the notes I made and just kind of like let me know how off base I am. So when I was reading it, one thing I noticed was common phrases that kept getting repeated, and I loved that. And I thought it was like a through line. Is that you know, what do I have to lose? Seemed to be like a common thing. Like, what do I have to lose? Everybody is either telling somebody, what do I have to lose? Or Abigail herself is saying, well, what do I have to lose? You know? And I just loved that. I loved the, because fearlessness also is kind of a subtext to the story itself. So I wondered if maybe if that was intended or if that's something that was just like a happy accident. But
yeah, you know, I think I tend to write stories about people that to a certain degree are fish out of water, that find themselves in environments that are at best indifferent to their existence and at worst openly hostile to it. And I think that's because, partially because I've always felt like somewhat of an outsider myself. And so, you know, a comic like Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade on the surface might not seem to have anything in common with Tinseltown, but it is about 2 teenage boys that are trying to find their place in the world, you know. And so in that sense, there is kind of a through line in my work. And yes, I don't know if that answers your question, but
a little bit actually. And you know, so it's funny that you mentioned some of the things about just like kind of feeling like an outsider or things of that nature. Is that I think anybody who's just trying to break into comics at first does have that outsider, I'm a fraud kind of feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
And it's like, and then another line that kept coming up was like, well, everybody wants to break into the pictures, right? So it's like, and I think back to like, you know, artist alleys at Comic-Cons and small press sections. And it's like, everybody wants to break in, right? And I felt like a little bit of like Abigail's story is also the story of an indie creator trying to make it out there. And
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that really hit it home for me was page 38. There's a line that says, you know, you're waiting around all day to get noticed, when she was talking about the cowboys wrangling and doing the roping tricks. And then I was like, that's any given Comic-Con artist alley, is just, you know, a bunch of people sketching, waiting around to get noticed to make a sale or just to connect with a fan or something like that. And it's just like, basically the heart of indie comics was beating throughout this book, and I was picking up on it as I was going through it, and I absolutely love that. And I wasn't sure, again, if that subtext was intentional or if it was just natural by proxy, because, you know, you yourself are an indie comic creator.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that was something I set out intentionally to do, but that doesn't mean it's not there. I mean, I do think that the people that create works of art, you know, if I can call it art,
100% you can.
Okay, are not always the best people, you know, to be able to see the forest for the trees, because they're so close to what they're creating. They may not be cognizant of elements like that are there, right? Sure. I mean, so in the case of what you're talking about, Gower Gulch was inspired by something that that was real. I don't know if you guys noticed on the news when there were looting in Hollywood. There was one store that was like kind of a Rite Aid pharmacy that got really badly looted, and in that mini mall there was like kind of a covered wagon and some other old Western style touches you might have noticed in the background. Well, that was Gower Gulch, which is still there, and it used to be you know, just like a big dirt lot where cowboys that were fresh, real cowboys that were fresh off the boat from the farms would come and practice horse tricks and rope tricks. And then, you know, periodically they were cranking out so many Westerns, you know, producers would stop by and they'd go, I'll take you, I'll take you. And, you know, the thing that it most reminds me of is if you go, you know, less than a mile west to the Home Depot, you have Mexican immigrants that are hanging out in the parking lot waiting for people to go, like, hey, I'll hire you for a day's worth of day labor, and, you know, we'll give you $5 in lunch. And, you know, that's kind of, it was very much a similar thing, right? There was nothing particularly glamorous about it.
Sure, sure. No, I can see how that was adjacent, even culturally, and even just nowadays, like that same mentality is, like you said, now at a Home Depot, you know, and it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I know I mentioned before, like, you know, some indie creators, you kind of have like this sense of like, you know, like you're a fraud until you make it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Abigail said when somebody's like, are you a cop? She goes, I'm not a real cop. I am, but it's complicated. So it's just like, you know, even myself, when somebody's like, oh, you're a writer, I'm like, not really. But wait a minute, I am. I wrote a bunch of stuff. I guess the self-realization of what you are based upon what you do, I guess, you know, oh, I am a writer. Oh, I am a cop. Yeah. You know, if it walks like a duck, duck talks like a duck, it's a duck, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that actually, there's a story, I'll probably misachieve this. It might have been like Laurence Olivier, who was talking to some young actor who was pontificating about his theories of being an actor and what it means to act, and, you know, what the true nature of acting is all about. And Laurence Olivier, or somebody in that caliber, said to him, listen, son, the only time you're an actor is when you're actually acting. You know?
Yes.
But I do know what you mean. You know, the whole thing of being a creative person and feeling. I think there's something inherent to the creative cycle, right? Where you either have that hit of adrenaline that you get from being really super happy with what you're doing, and you think, like, I'm the greatest writer in the world. There's nobody better than me at this, you know. Or you think like, oh my God, like, you know, why can't I, you know, solve this problem? Like, how terrible am I that you know? So yeah, I think, but that's just all part of. It's also part of the manic depressive cycle, and those two are kind of closely related. So
yeah, I think that any creative kind of carries self-doubt on their shoulder a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
Sure. Which is, it's healthy though, because you want to question yourself. You know, as much as it's great to be in the zone, and you know, you do want to go back and say, well, maybe my first instinct wasn't necessarily the best way to handle this, and writing is rewriting and all that good stuff. So
of course, one other pair. Sorry,
I was gonna say, be able to take criticism too. That's a huge thing. I think, you know, And back to your point, I think we've all met both types at conventions, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Me and Johnny know.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So what cons do you guys usually do?
Well, we're more on, Johnny gets around. He's all over the place. I'm kind of primarily up in the New England area most of the time. But I've been trying to get to San Diego for 5 years now at least, but it's like impossible to get a table there.
Yeah, we had a table there 1 year, and it was great. I mean, you know, it was amazing, but we haven't since. So
sure thing. Yeah. So I try to get around as much as possible. I think a really, you know, my mantra, I guess, for creating indie comics is quality, consistency, and travel. Okay. That's kind of what I usually go by. It's like I try to put out quality work. I try to do it consistently, and then, you know, getting around to tell people about it. So I really try to hit the major shows. I do San Diego every year. I started in San Diego in 2009, going as just a fan before I started even doing anything creatively and just trying to put it out there in the world. I just started going as a fan, and I fell in love with the place because it's our people, right?
Oh yeah.
And you know, there's great, and that's the other thing too. And I mentioned it in the last podcast or video cast we did was, you know, people mistake San Diego for being this overblown Hollywood media fest when a lot of like really great educational panels and how-to panels, writing panels, creator connections kind of occur in the underbelly of San Diego. And that's where I kind of helped shape me as an individual. So, you know, I was going to all these different panels and it kind of helped boost my creativity a little bit more.
Oh, yeah.
Help me channel it, you know?
I would say San Diego is largely a con, you know, what you make of it, because there's so many tracks of programming happening. That, you know, yes, you can go there if you're only interested in seeing TV and movie stars, which I see enough TV and movie stars during my day job to last a lifetime. I don't need to see any more. So, you know, that's not why I go there. But yeah, if you're just interested in the nuts and bolts of learning how to, you know, make indie comics and market indie comics and sell indie comics, you know, that is absolutely, your days will be filled day and night for all 4.5 days with panels about that.
Absolutely. You get what, you know, it gives you what you need out of it, basically, you know, depending upon the type of individual you are. Now, you mentioned having a day job outside of comics. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my day job is I am the recordist on the feature ADR stage on the Fox lot.
Oh.
Yeah, so, you know, we work on TV and movies, and which is another aspect of, you know, why I felt confident about being able to write Tinseltown, is that I've been on a studio lot for since about 1997, you know, so a long time. So I'm fairly familiar with, you know, how lots operate, what the studio culture is like, and you know, although it's changed a lot since the silent days, it hasn't changed that much, you know.
I was going to say, you know, reading Tinseltown, it felt genuine. So obviously somebody who had knowledge of the culture had to have had input, and I was like, either David did his research or he's doing it on a daily basis, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Cool.
That's
not bad.
Yeah. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, not to, I don't need to hog the whole conversation. I read Mighty Mascots 1 today. I downloaded a digital copy. Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. My favorite line, by the way, was, you know, I'm not a soft drink.
Thanks. Yeah, and my wife kind of nailed that character perfectly. Like, if we were gonna get an actor to like voice that character, she sees it as JB Smoove.
Okay,
would be perfect, you know. For like that annoying voice, but like he would be perfect for that kind of character, you know. Oh, thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, I'm a child of the, you know, late 70s, early 80s and stuff. So I remember all of those characters that your characters are sort of parodies of. And you know, the Kool-Aid commercials and Toucan Sam and Captain Crunch, and you know,
that's what it's all about. Just a throwback to Saturday morning cartoons, but also I wanted it to be kind of like, I didn't write it. It has a parody element, but I kind of wrote it serious too. Yeah, kind of like I was telling Peter last night, like kind of like what Eastman and Laird did with the Turtles. Yeah, they have this absurd concept, but they treated it seriously.
Right.
And it, that's the tone I'm kind of going for with the series.
Yeah, and I think you hit that, definitely.
No, thanks. Yeah.
The
second one that I'm working on now is going to be fun as hell, I think. With the video game characters.
I was going to say kind of like Police Squad. They took it seriously, but it was very comedic in that nature.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Although I did have a thought. I was thinking, like, all of these mascots are mascots for, like, really sugary stuff, right? So wouldn't they be the natural allies of the tooth decay? Because, I mean...
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that aspect. I was approaching it more like these are the good ones but everybody else is evil. Like every other mascot that's created is kind of evil because it's made like a tainted formula.
Right. Now, have you done a parody yet of like the Hostess Ho-Ho ads and things like that? No,
I'm thinking about those guys are in the back of my head. I think
Twinkie the Kid.
Yeah, I got to do the Twinkie the Kid and the other guy there, the Hostess fruit pie guy.
Right. Oh yeah.
And Bazooka Joe too, right? I mean, that's
yep. I'm thinking like the slush. I mean, you could do it. There's a million mascots you could parody, and
the whole mascot thing's kind of like a lost art. We don't have new mascots now. I mean, who's our modern day mascots? Flo from Progressive. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, you wrote the book specifically speaking to our generation because we were rife with mascots, from yesteryear leading up through the 80s.
But maybe like a parody of the Geico lizard could be like a villain in a future mascot arc, right? Because he's like part of the modern guard. Yeah.
I'm already thinking like I have the next few storylines planned, like the next one after the video game, I'm thinking of doing like fast food. I think there's a lot I can do there.
Oh, that's cool.
I would also like to do a one shot with the Jolly Green Giant and Sprout.
Okay.
That could be a lot of fun too.
Uh-huh.
But,
that might be cool.
Yeah, I definitely want to do a lot of
guy, Rusty Robot,
and create all their rogues galleries and like, create a rogues galleries for the mascot, but also create like allies too. So I'm still building it up, and so we'll see, see where it goes. But to be honest, I was floored by the Indiegogo love. Like in the last day, I couldn't believe how well
it's going great.
And that's I got to give it to Peter for that. Peter helped me build the Indiegogo from the bottom up. That's why it's taken me months to do it. I would do it all one way, and then Peter's like, "Oh, change this and help, make this different," and
Now, have you done Indiegogo before? Have you done Kickstarter before, anything like that?
I've done Kickstarter before, but I was telling Johnny last week, like I've done it when I did my first Kickstarter. It was like right when Kickstarter was starting.
Okay.
So probably like 3 months after Kickstarter became a thing, and it was like it was nerve-wracking because, like I had to call in every favor from like high school to like, grade school with people, and people were like, "What the heck is Kickstarter? I don't even know what this is."
Right.
Trying to get people to buy into that was like pulling teeth, But we did it, and we actually made our goal, which was pretty lofty at that time too,
Right. What was your first goal, just out of curiosity?
I think it was 6,000.
Oh,
but
wow.
like I said, I called in every favor to make that happen. It was just like, it was almost down to the wire. Like I think we had 2 days left on the campaign before I hit the goal. It
is stressful, man.
Oh,
like I've done a number of them myself, and it's like working a full-time job. And just you're watching that number, and you're like, "Oh God, please let me make it."
Yeah, right. Now, have you hit on all of your campaigns?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, me too. But I've only done. This is actually my third one.
Okay.
My first one on Indiegogo, and my third one in general. So.
Okay.
And I like Indiegogo better, to tell you the truth. Just all the features and everything, so much better than Kickstarter.
Okay.
Now, David, I was going to ask, I know there's no magic bullet for any of the crowdsourcing platforms, but if you can impart any of the wisdom you've had from running several successful campaigns, is there anything you can kind of, any anecdotes or anything you can give to other indie creators out there?
Yeah, you're always going to run into unforeseen problems, right? I mean, it's a given. And so the best thing that you can do, to make sure that you deliver your project on time is to have the book done and only worry about the printing process. And, I've actually made my goals for all but one of my Kickstarters. And part of the reason why that one was so delayed is because I was using a printing company that doesn't exist anymore called Kraken Printing. It was a huge nightmare actually getting the books from them. And I know a lot of people that got completely burned by them. So, even the best laid plans of men can sometimes still go awry. So you have to be prepared for that possibility.
Yeah. And like, I always tell people, if you're going to do a crowdsourcer, try to go as low, make the goal as low as you possibly can.
Yeah.
That way you hit it. Especially with Kickstarter, it's more important. With Indiegogo, you can do the flexible thing and keep what you make, which is nice. But Kickstarter, it's all or nothing. So, so I always say, if you can get by with, you might need $4 grand, but if you can get by with like 2 or 3, and hope that you get more money, after you hit that goal, that's the way to go. I think,
Yeah, the great thing about it is that it exposes you to lots of other people that wouldn't necessarily be familiar with your work, but I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say you're going to be able to raise enough money to pay for every aspect of the project itself just within the Kickstarter.
Right.
But you may be able to print enough books that if you eventually sell all those books, you've paid for the project itself.
Yeah, I agree with you too. You want to kind of have a plan. If you're going to do a crowdsourcer, you kind of want to have a plan for making the delivery happen with the book. Like where I'm doing the mascots right now, is like I'm doing it mostly to pay for the artist and colorist.
Okay.
So I'm trying to make sure that I'm ready to go when this campaign's over. Like I want to just be able to as soon as I get the money, hand them the script and the thumbnails and like let them go to town, So I'm trying to get all that stuff done in the next month so that I can just be like, here you go. And then I can hopefully have all 3 issues by the end of the year. Knock on wood, hopefully,
Right.
Be ready for like the original. I think Peter's like looking at early next year to release them. I don't really have a date yet, but like, around there to like put them actually on, for distribution and all that fun stuff. So
cool.
But yeah, I'm trying to think what else. Oh, actually, let me pop this up while we're talking here. I pulled up your Etsy studio here.
Okay.
Let's see, so we could take a look at this. So yeah, this is so it's Abacab. Is that how you say it?
Abacab Studios. Yeah.
And then if you want to walk us through what's available here.
Yeah. So like I said, up top there you have the Complete Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade, which is a 3-volume graphic novel series, right? So, and it's color covers, black and white interior, but let's see, it's a little counterintuitive. But you can see these are the 3 covers here, and
I'll pop you up and we'll take a look closer.
Okay, sure. And then, you also get a dossier that has some unreleased art as well from that series. And then the other option, you have the Complete Tinseltown graphic novel. And I'm also throwing in, for anybody that orders either of those, I'm throwing in that came out on a Wednesday that has the Tinseltown story in it. Yeah.
All for $20?
Yeah, all for $20.
It's a bargain.
I know.
And you're signing it too, and you're going to sign it too. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. And then, as you can see, there's, like I said, the pin set. Each you have the badge, the logo, and the headshot. We also have 3 prints that are available of Tinseltown. You have to click on that to see that better. But so that one on the left is by Ryan Wynn.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought I recognized that artwork. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other one, that's actually the back cover of
right here.
The Tinseltown graphic novel. And then to the far right there, that's kind of a Tinseltown Judge Dredd Judge Anderson mashup that we did for fun too. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I really like that. Okay, and that's
there you can see the covers a little bit. And the other thing I should mention about the brigade is it too was inspired by some historical circumstances. So,
oh really?
Can you tell us a little bit more about that one?
Yeah, so in the 1950s in Scotland, in a Glasgow graveyard, hundreds of school kids went looking for a vampire over several nights, and it was considered mass hysteria. And in our book, some of the kids found what they were looking for, and they formed the Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade. Flash forward to the point where they're all old men, and there's a couple of delinquent teenagers drinking in that same graveyard on the night that the vampires come back.
Oh, wow.
That sounds good. I'll have to pick this one up from you soon.
Oh,
very cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, this stuff looks great, Dave.
Oh, thank you, man.
What is Winter Horror Days? Is that a book you wrote, or is that a comic as well?
So that's a book. It's a collection of horror short stories that are inspired by winter holidays, different winter holidays. I have a story in there, and I wrote the introduction, and I edited the book. But you've got like stories in there by David Gerrold, who wrote Star Trek: Land of the Lost, and Trouble with Tribbles, and he also created the Sleestock and wrote Land of the Lost.
Cool.
You have stories by Lisa Morton, who was the former president of the Horror Writers Association. Bob Cabine, who just won a Stoker for horror excellence. Lots of really talented people wrote some great stories. So that's
awesome.
What that's about.
And Johnny, and I don't know if you knew this, but you and David are in a book together. Did you know that?
Yeah, we're in Cthulhu, or one of the Cthulhus, right? Which one are you in, David?
Yeah, I'm in the new one, the Terrible Twos. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Which story is yours?
So my story is The Old Gods Ain't What They Used to Be.
You have to refresh my memory. They all kind of bleed together a little bit.
Okay, it's sort of a pastiche of the Lovecraft story, The Picture in the House. So guy's lost in the woods, comes out of the storm, finds this abandoned cabin, and meets like a little Cthulhu that's living in the cabin.
Oh yeah, it's like a hapless little like Cthulhu,
Yeah.
like it's cute, but like he's villainous, almost
Exactly.
like a Marvin the Martian kind of vibe.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Oh, I loved that one. That one was great.
Oh, thanks, man. That's it was a fun story, and I was happy with it. And that was Henry did the art to that too, actually.
Was that the same artist from Tinseltown?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right.
So what's your story?
Guys, is that can you get that?
The Kickstarter's closed. I think Russell wrote that he's going to be sending out the books in July.
I think July we'll have access to be able to acquire books, and then from there we can distribute however we see fit, I guess.
Yeah, I've seen the other book at Johnny's table. It's really nice.
Yeah. So
I might even think about getting involved in that next time there's another one, because it's a really nice product, actually. It's that hardcover looks really nice. I gotta admit, to be part of an indie creator is pretty cool.
It's popular at shows. The first volume I sold out of whatever I had left at this year's C2E2. A lot of people, the cover stops them in their tracks. I mean, it's really it's really an eye-catching book, which is helpful. Same thing with Monsters. I see that Monsters is on the website too.
Yeah,
I wasn't in Monsters, but I've got something in the two Cthulhus. It's actually a continuing story.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they connect. the first book is How to Summon the Dark Lord Hastur. And then the second one is How the Dark Lord Hastur Conquers the World.
Okay, cool.
So it kind of connects very loosely, but it's kind of like a through line. So, and that was one of the things I really wanted to do, and I kind of had to like talk Russell into it a little bit. Is it's its own story, but it is also a sequel, and I love that there's kind of connective thread between the two books, the two anthologies.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's also part in keeping with the tradition of Lovecraft, right? Is that there's this whole mythos that connects, that other people were writing Lovecraft stuff as kind of fan fiction, and so.
Right, yeah. So I felt like that was kind of a cool aspect to it, a cool layer of it,
For sure.
I was, I don't know if you guys saw that pop up on my screen. I'm playing with a new aspect for the show, just like a fun little, let me see. So I came up with some fun questions based off of me and Johnny's comic books for the guest. So we could try it out on you, Dave. So
sure, let's do it.
This question is brought to you by the Mighty Mascots.
Okay.
So, what is your favorite sugary cereal?
Sugary cereal. I got to go Cinnamon Life.
Cinnamon Life, really?
Yeah, okay. It's like a dessert in itself, really.
That's a good choice, actually. I think I Live and Die by Quisp, which is what Mondo's based off of.
Now,
what's that?
I was going to say what I like to do is I like to cut the Cinnamon Life sometimes with like Crispix, so it's like half and half.
So it's got like a sugary and then like a plainer taste. Like it cuts the sugar a little bit. How about you, Johnny? I don't think I ever asked you what your favorite is.
I mean, I don't know. I definitely have my mainstays that I'll go to as a default. But right now, and because I'm a big maple fan, I love maple generally. I'm digging on the Eggo waffle cereal.
I recommend that to everybody because I always try a new cereal when I see it, and that one,
it's like, so take honeycomb and make it maple flavored, and there you go. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it also kind of tastes like, and this is going to be such a weird throwback, but you remember how there was like a cereal brand for like every movie that came out back in the day? The Addams Family cereal is the identical flavor to this Eggo waffle cereal. So it's kind of bringing me back a little bit to,
really?
When the movies came out when I was a kid, they had this Addams Family cereal, and it was this maple flavor that's identical to the Eggo flavor. So that kind of brings me back a little bit.
Oh, definitely. And before we go to the next question, we actually have a question for the chat for Dave. So let me pop this up.
Oh, yeah.
From Doug here. He's like, how do you come up with the ideas for your books? Are they from history, stories, or just from your imagination?
It's probably a combination of all three. Certainly both in the case of the Brigade and Tinseltown, the initial spark for the stories came from me just kind of going down the rabbit hole of the internet one night and finding some interesting historical circumstances that kind of sparked my imagination, right? So in the case of Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade, I found out that the youngest participant that went in looking in the graveyard for a vampire was only 4 years old. And I thought to myself, well, what would inspire a 4-year-old to take a steak knife or whatever, a stick, and go into a graveyard looking for a vampire? And I thought, well, maybe he's got a baby sister that he wants to protect. Oh. He heard about this vampire. And then, it sort of flowed from there. So, yeah, I think it's always partially personal experience. And then in my case, definitely history. I'm a fan and student of history. And then also, yeah, just letting the imagination run wild. And once you've established characters, saying to yourself, like, well, I feel like I know these guys. How would they react to this circumstance? What would they do, if this happened to them? And how much can I torture them and get away with
it? It gets to a point where the characters almost start to write themselves. They have their own voices, and they just live in your head.
Yeah. Oh, hang on one second. I think I just timed out. There I am. Okay.
Okay. And we got our next question inspired by Johnny's comic, Sartana. What is your favorite Western?
Tombstone. The movie.
Tombstone. That's a great choice.
Oh, that's an awesome one.
I
Yeah,
love
Michael
that movie.
Biehn. Yeah, that's a great one.
Well, the cast in that is unbelievable too. Like,
Yeah.
such a great Western.
Val Kilmer. Oh my God.
Val
Doc
Kilmer's
Holliday.
great. Yep.
Ugh.
So the one thing I love the most about Tombstone is that it came out in an era where Westerns were like at their all-time low. Nobody was making Westerns, and it was just like, it's kind of like a lost genre form. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And here comes Tombstone with this awesome ensemble cast out of nowhere.
Right. And what's interesting is when it came out, it initially didn't, like most movies, they come out, they open big and then they kind of drop off gradually or quickly. But it came out, it didn't do that good. And then it stuck around and word of mouth started to build. The box office actually went up after it came out, which is highly unusual for a film these days.
Yeah.
So rare for that to happen, which is another special thing about it, right?
Yeah. And the other thing about that is supposedly the director, got fired from that. And the movie was really directed by Kurt Russell. That's what everybody says.
Oh, that's a neat fact. I didn't know that one. That's very cool. Well, I mean, you hear about that happening all the time on other movies, right? That, they say Dredd was actually directed by Alex Garland,
right?
So to speak, even though, there's another director involved there.
Well, even I worked on at Fox, I worked on well, actually all the Fantastic Four movies, but the most recent Fantastic Four movie. And that was kind of a weird thing too.
The stories you could probably tell, man.
Yeah.
Just the stories that are wigs alone.
Yeah, right. That's the Trank one, right? The Josh Trank one.
Yeah. That was a weird situation.
I can
He just
imagine.
came out with something, didn't he? Like a Capone movie, like an Al Capone movie or something.
Yeah, there's a new Capone movie that's his latest flick, and it's I've actually been meaning to watch it. I'm a little intrigued by it. It's basically about the from what I understand, the last days of Capone and his failing mental health.
Yeah.
So there's a certain element there of him losing his mind, and I'm very
That's the
curious.
one with Tom Hardy, right?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw one
Interesting.
preview for it. It looks kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'm curious to see it.
All right, that's cool. Yeah, so let me. So here's I have four questions total. Here's the third one.
Okay.
This one is based off of my comic Swamp Tales, and it's what's your favorite comic strip?
Oh, that's easy. Calvin and Hobbes.
Yes, yeah. I feel like that's going to be the answer for a lot of people, actually.
I'm not the first.
Yeah,
Oh, and I'm the first because it's the first person you asked, right? But I won't be the last. Okay. Yeah.
I might be the outlier here, but I've always liked Ziggy, the pinhead, right? Ziggy.
Ziggy. I know Ziggy. Yeah. But I named my son Calvin. So.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that. That's great. Based off of that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, cool. That's great. Awesome. And my final question is, and this is based off Johnny's comic. Johnny's comic, Surrounded by Death. What's your favorite zombie movie?
Favorite zombie movie? I got to go with the one that started it all, Night of the Living Dead. I mean, without that, there are no zombie movies. And I'm from Pittsburgh too, so I'm a hometown boy.
Nice. Did you ever visit where you filmed and all that stuff?
Not intentionally. I mean, I was at the Monroeville Mall where they filmed Dawn of the Dead because that was the mall that everybody went to. But I did play in a band with a guy that was the son of Barbara and Cletus Anderson that were Romero's costume and set designers. So you'd go over to their house and they'd have like costumes from Knight Riders, and they'd have unreleased George Romero scripts just lying around, and I was in heaven, So actually, fun story: George Romero came to see my band play in high school because I was in the band with this guy, and Knight Riders is and was my favorite movie of all time. So I played the theme from Knight Riders during my guitar solo for Mr. Romero.
That's awesome. And did you get to meet him after and
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably shook his hand that night. And then years and years later, he was at Comic-Con, and I I don't like to bother people for their autographs. I kind of feel like I'm a little too old for that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I said to my wife, she was like, "Oh, there's George Romero," you know, and I go, "Yeah, I don't want to bother him." And she's like, "He's all by himself, and nobody is saying anything to him," you know. And I'm like, "Oh, okay," you know. So I went up to him and I was like, "Hey, you know," I kind of reminded him, you know, of what my connections were to his world and whatnot. And I said, Knight Rider is my favorite movie. And he said, "Oh, hang on 1 minute," you know. And he like sifted through all the boxes of all of his popular movies that he had 8x10s for. And at the very bottom of one of the boxes, you know, like covered in dust, he had a few Knight Riders 8x10s left. And he pulled one out and he signed it, you know, George Romero, "Stay Scared." And I said, "This is great. You know, what do I owe you?" And he looked at me and he said, "I owe you."
That's great.
Yeah.
Something similar happened to me with oh god, the fellow's name is escaping me, but he played Flat Top in Dick Tracy.
Oh, okay.
Oh god, if you remember his name, Keith.
Forsythe, right?
William Forsythe. Awesome guy. I was afraid to approach him just because like he's such an intimidating character. But he was the nicest guy in the world, and I'm a big fan of Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead.
Oh, I love that movie. Yeah.
And I told him, I was like, and he had none of the in same situation. He had none of the prints from that on the table, and he goes, "Hang on a second," pulls out that, signs it, Boat Drinks, and gives it to me. He's like, "This is my last one. Here you go." And I was just over the moon that there was that connection of this like deep cut movie that, you know, very few people know of or care of, and you know, I just appreciated it so much, you know.
Yeah, it's an awesome feeling for sure.
I had a funny story with him. It was I think it was Rhode Island Comic Con. It was like right before the con opened, and I just took a walk down to the celebrity area just to take a look, and he was there setting up, and I just walked over to him and I said, "Hey man, how's it going? I really enjoy you playing villains and everything." And we started talking about, oddly enough, like that Seagal movie, Out for Justice.
Oh yeah, that's the one where he like picks up the guy and like throws him into the car window at the opening sequence.
Yeah, he doesn't even get the fight back. He was talking about that scene. He goes, Seagal wouldn't let me even get one punch in because he was like, you know, at the height of his career at that time. He goes, so I kind of whacked him right in the nuts during one of the scenes. He made William Forsythe one of the greatest guys I've ever met at a convention, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about like fight scenes with Steven Seagal movies is they're so one-sided. I mean, like he's never like down or, you know, like in any kind of trouble with.
He goes, if it was a real fight, the other guy would at least get another one punch in or something. He goes, they wouldn't even let me do it, you know?
Yeah.
That was great. That was good stuff.
Keith, what's your favorite zombie movie?
Mine, you know, it's a toss-up between Night and Dawn, actually, for me.
Yeah.
You know, anything Romero, pretty much, but Night and Dawn especially. I think Dawn more, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can tell you Romero's story. So growing up in Pittsburgh, you know how there's like 6 degrees of separation. Well, in Pittsburgh, it's like it's a triangle. It's not a square. There's like 1 degree of separation. So, one of my stepsister's best friends growing up was Kyra Shawn, who is, you know, the child that stabs her mother with the earliest example of a zombie using a tool. You know, And so I actually got to know her and hang out with her at a couple cons, and she couldn't be like cooler. And then Tom Savini, who, you know, did the effects for Dawn and Day and all that stuff. He was doing like makeup for like a charity thing, like a department store. Like, you know, you pay like $10 to the charity and he'll make you up. And so like, I can actually say I was made up as a clown by Tom Savini.
That's really cool.
Very cool. Yeah.
I ran into him at one con. He was kind of he was just kind of walking around, and we were like, Tom Savini, oh my god! And then he just kind of, I got the sense he was annoyed, so I didn't bother him too much.
Okay.
Just kind of high, and then I kind of went on my own way. But you know, you can kind of get the sense that he didn't want to be bothered, so I just like, I'll get out of here.
You know, the thing is, you never know. You might catch somebody on a bad day at a bad time. You never know what's going on in their life either. You know, it's like they might have just their faithful dog might be on death's door. I mean, you know, anything could be happening.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I have met Romero once at a Fangoria convention, and sweetest guy. You know, just kind of came. And I wasn't really. I was kind of like you, Dave. I'm kind of over the whole autograph thing, but like. You know, I just wanted to go up and talk to him for a minute, and I ended up getting an autograph. But like it, you know, just a few minutes with the master, you know.
Oh so yeah, Romero came out to L.A. and he did a whole speech. I think it was at I want to say it was the Hollywood Directors Guild or someplace like that, and he was talking all about his theory of horror, right? And I thought it was really interesting. So he talks about like basically to be sane and to live a normal life, there are certain facts that you kind of have to put in the back of your mind, okay? That certain parts of reality that you have to deny, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be able to function. And one of those parts of reality is the idea that you're going to die someday, right? If you were to fixate on that and nothing else, you wouldn't be able to live. So you have to sort of live in denial and not think about that. But there's a guy in sort of the unconscious packaging shipment center of your brain who's kind of a shady drifter and got hired because they were short on staff. And every once in a while, he will slip a package unsolicited onto that conveyor belt that reminds you that you are going to die someday. And that is kind of the nature of horror.
That's how I distribute my indie comics to publishers I want to have pick me up at shows. Just unsolicited, you know, right? I was actually just going to make a quick point that kind of ties things back to Tinseltown.
Oh, yeah.
Approaching individuals at New York Comic Con, I had an opportunity to meet Stan Lee. And I was just like, should I do it? Should I not do it? And I was like, I have to, right?
Yeah.
This is my moment to speak to the man. Who knows if I'll get a chance to speak to him again. I think this was 2013.
Okay.
And I had just put out Sartana, my first spaghetti western comic book, self-published. And I asked him, I was like, you know, is there any I showed him the book, and I just, you know, I had 30 seconds, maybe a minute tops to speak to him. So I'm rattling off as quick as I can. It was like, any advice you can give me for a fledgling amateur creator on a spaghetti western comic book? And he just looks up to me and he goes, son, just keep doing it. and I was like, oh, that's great advice. You just keep doing it. And then when I was reading Tinseltown, page 126, Abigail says, I kept playing, and somewhere along the line, it just became real.
Yeah.
And it was just like Stan Lee gave me that same advice. You just keep doing it, you know, keep writing, keep playing the part, and eventually it is the part, right?
Right. You become that which you aspire to be, fake it till you make it, that whole thing. I can tell you my Stan Lee story. So he was a guest star on The Simpsons, which I helped.
Oh, yeah. That was a great episode.
Love that episode.
And which, by the way, The Simpsons got Alan Moore as voice talent. Nobody gets Alan Moore.
I was blown away by that. It was unbelievable that they got that, let alone to have him favor little Lulu in the bit. Like, that was so crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyhow, back to Stan Lee. So he came in, and we don't really, you know, it's kind of against company policy. We don't take pictures with any of the talent, like hardly ever. Right. But Stan Lee's a living legend. So, you know, you can make the occasional exception. And I had just put out my very first issue of my first comic ever of Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade. And I was like, I just got to give him a copy of my comic because I have it on me and it's Stan Lee. And I want to be able to say that I did that. So, you know, I gave it to him and he was like, oh, right, that's awesome. A comic book, you know, and like, it was probably not even the first comic book that he had been given that afternoon, but he was so nice and so gracious. You would think that nobody had ever given him a comic book before, you know? And I was like, well, that's what I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah, that's what a quality of individual, right? Like, a million comics passed by his hands, you know, that day alone, like you said, and, you know, he gave you the time of day. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
And I bet he read it too, you know? Like, just
he may have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything I knew about him, you know, like, yeah, you're right. It's awesome. And the advice he gave you, Johnny, I mean, I think that's 100% true. The only way you get better at it is if you keep going, you know?
Right.
You gotta love this medium, and then you gotta just keep making and producing books. You know, that's the driving thing. You know.
He couldn't have. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just saying he just couldn't have given me better advice at that point. You know, he's just like, what more sagely wisdom from the man himself than just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I would say too. You know, I mean, it's true with all creative endeavors, but comics especially, I think, is something that you learn by doing, because the more that you do it, every comic, every scene in every comic is unique, and it presents a unique series of problems to have to solve. You know, but once you've solved, you know, enough scenes and enough problems, you start to come up with ways to solve those problems that become your approach and your style, and, you know, that hopefully people like.
Yeah, definitely. And like, I always find it fascinating talking to other writers and how their process is from breaking down pages and things like that, you know?
Yeah.
You know, like I always find that fascinating, because the way I write is like, I wouldn't recommend to anybody.
Well, what do you do?
Well, it's almost like I write, I'm more of like, with the dialogue, I'm focused more on that when I write a book, a comic script.
Yeah.
So I actually write it like a screenplay. And I don't even worry about, like, because I know a lot of the comic scripts are like panel 1, page 1. I don't even worry about that. I kind of just get the action down and the dialogue. Then I go back and I start breaking down the pages according to, you know, like scenes and things like that. And I try to get it down to, like, you know, how many pages it'll need or whatever, you know. And then it's almost like rewriting it like 5 times for no reason. Not even like not even doing like a second draft yet, but it's like almost like just getting the format right for the, you know, for the first, you know.
Yeah.
How about yourself? What's your process, David?
So typically what I do, there's a program called Comic Life, which is really sort of like a lettering program. And it's something that like people can use to like take pictures of themselves and add like, you know, bits of word balloons and things like that. But I use that just to do kind of like a rough, like panel by panel breakdown. I mean, it depends. I go back and forth. Sometimes I'll start writing a script in Final Draft, and then I'll break it down by panel in Comic Life. Sometimes I'll just start, like you were saying, with the dialogue or captions, because I know in my mind what's supposed to be happening in Comic Life, and then I'll go from that format to turn it into a script in Final Draft, where I explain the visual details to the artist panel by panel. But I mean, the whole idea being that you want to always give the reader a reason to move their eyes across the panel to get to the next panel, right? And to turn the page, and it could be something as simple as in panel A on page 1, the first character asks a character a question, and then in the next panel, to understand, to hear that character's answer to that question, you have to go to that panel, you know, to some major plot revelation that's going to be on the final page turn. But I'm always trying to think of it in terms of trying every flow and every trick not to lose the reader.
Yeah, no, that's good, because I don't often think about that when I write, which is, you know, maybe I should do that a little more. I'm more of like just getting the paper open and letting the characters talk to themselves in my head. You know what I mean? And then I'm just kind of just transcribing everything, and then I worry about format later. So it's like I'm just ass backwards, I guess, you know.
Everybody has a different approach, though. You know, I mean, like
Johnny, is it the same thing, or
dude? My approach is a 3-ring circus.
Oh, really?
So usually, whatever the primary idea, the precipice of whatever it is, be it a scene, character, you know, just an action sequence, whatever the case may be, I'll map the story out, starting with that point. So, and I usually have to kind of do it in a visual manner. And so by the end of it, it looks like a tack board that you see where a character is trying to investigate a murder, and there's all sorts of strings tying to different points. So I'll start with
to like kind of, so you know where your story beats are. You know, I kind of do that a little bit. Like I do that with an outline. Basically, I figure out all those points, and then I just have the characters talk until they get to those points, you know.
Right.
So I usually like to do it to show that every idea I have is interconnected with each other in the story. Basically, I build kind of like a mesh or a net of just all my story ideas, beats, characters, details, how they're connected to each other. And then once I've basically built a world in like this graph format, I'll take that and then I'll filter it through like like act 1, 2, and 3 structure. And then once I have that, I'll go, okay, what's my pages? You know, how am I dividing this up by pages?
Yeah.
And then from there, I'll try to do the 2, 4, 6, 8 page turn and play to that. You know, if you look through Surrounded by Death issue 1, like there's a lot of splash pages, and that's a lot of. So I really just because I was trying to like squeeze a 2, 4, and 6 in, like, you know, like just the right page turn to the right thing. So I was like, let's make this a splash page.
Book, right?
What's that?
Was that your first book?
Surrounded by Death?
Yeah.
No, Sartana was. But Surrounded by Death came shortly after. So I mean, and at times I was working on them in tandem. So it's kind of like you can consider it my first book.
Okay. Yeah. So
that's where you learn, though. You know.
Yeah.
Now, because I'm not the artist too, I also always take a final pass in rewriting the dialogue and the captions once I get the art, because you know it's often the case that because Henry says something in terms of a physical gesture or facial expression with the characters that makes the dialogue redundant or superfluous, right?
Yeah.
So the other thing is, when I did Tinseltown, the first one, I was submitting it. It was 99.9% in the can. There were a few minor changes that were made along the way, but basically, I submitted it to Alterna as a graphic novel. And Peter, you know, that was after the contract we signed. And then Peter said, well, hey, I just started this thing called Newsprint. I think, you know, we could break it up and do it that way as a series first. And I said, oh, that's great. But my concern about Tinseltown Losing the Light is that I'm writing it as we go, you know, and I know where it has to end up, but I don't have the luxury to decide halfway through the book that I need to go back and plant something or fix something in issue 1 anymore, because, you know, as I'm writing as I go. So for Tinseltown Losing the Light, I actually got like, you know, calculated how many scenes are in the average book that I write. I wrote each scene that I knew had to be in the story in index cards so I could shuffle the index cards. And then I wrote like, you know, okay, issue 3 has to contain X number of scenes. These are the scenes that have to be in issue 3, 4, and 5, so that I knew I wouldn't get caught like walking across the wire and suddenly like losing my balance because I suddenly realized, oh, I should have put something in issue 2 that I forgot that's relevant to issue 5, right. Or I need an extra 20 pages to finish issue 5. Right. So,
yeah, you want issue 3 to be 60 pages and issue 4 to be 15, you know?
Yeah.
Well, so I was lucky enough to be able to do that when I re-released Sartana. It was like, okay, well, if I'm going to re-release it and self-publish it, actually, because initially I was under a publisher, I was under CCP Comics. And then I decided, you know, take it on my own. But at that point, I was like, well, here's an opportunity for me to kind of go back and George Lucas this thing and make my special edition. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Which is actually what I did with Director's Cut, too. There's actually like 6 additional pages. There's kind of a wraparound story. And then there's like a couple of additional pages of interior art, too. So, yeah, because originally when I was writing Tinseltown, like I thought to myself, well, this is going to be the only story that's told. So I wanted, you know, if somebody gets this book in a library, I want them to kind of know the big picture of what Abigail's life was. But now that I'm writing continuing stories, you know, like I'm picking up where the meat of the first story left off and kind of telling everything that happened. You know, that was another debate between Peter and I, is if you show Abigail as an old woman at the end, then from this point on, you know that she's not going to die in any Tinseltown story. And my argument is, well, yes, that's true, but that's never made it any less exciting for me to read a Sherlock Holmes story that's written by Watson. I know Watson's not going to die because he wrote the story, you know, unless you pull some weird Kevin Spacey American Beauty thing, you know, like it's not, obviously the character's still alive, but what keeps you interested is how they got to be still alive, right? I mean,
right. And there's plenty of stories that do that, I think, you know, that I've read, or even when you're watching a prequel movie on something,
Right.
that they're gonna survive somehow. So it's like how they get out of those situations is the interesting thing.
If you're reading a Batman book, Batman might die, but it's not going to stink. And
exactly. So yeah, that's good. So we're over an hour now, so we should probably start wrapping up here.
Yeah.
Dave, where's a good place for people to find you? We put the Etsy store up.
Yeah.
What about social media? What's a good place to find you?
Okay, so I pretty much live on Facebook. David Blake, as in the poet Blake, Tiger, Eyes of Fire, Lucarelli. And then I'm on Twitter at David Lucarelli as well. I have an Instagram. I don't really use it that much because I'm not an artist. And like you said, Abacab Studios is the name of where I have all my different creative projects. You can buy stuff directly signed from me on Etsy. And then abacabstudios.com is kind of my website too, where I just, have like all of my different various creative projects there with a little info about each of them.
Nice. So is there something, before we go, is there something else you're working on besides Tinseltown?
Yeah, I am not really comics related, but I've had some time on my hands because of this whole lockdown, COVID-19 thing. So I've actually working on a new song that I just wrote. So I played in a band in Hollywood for about 10 years called Dame Fortune. And we were kind of like, if you took like Kiss, Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses, put it in a blender, that was kind of what we were about. Put out 3 albums, DVD, played live shows. And then whole thing kind of fell apart at the end of the 2000s. Our drummer was killed in a car accident and things like that. So, but every so often I get the urge to still, keep my toe in the water and write a new song and throw it up there under the name. And so this one I'm really excited about because it's a song that I wrote, and then I got Matt Starr to play drums on it. And he's like, if you guys don't know, he's played with Ace Frehley, which I'm a huge Kiss fan. So, and Ace has always been great at picking out great drummers, and he's a great drummer. And then a buddy of mine, Detroit Mike Bradford, just laid down a bass line for the song. So it is, he's the guy that he was the live bass player for Kid Rock. And, he's produced a whole bunch of he's worked with everybody from Deep Purple to Madonna to Aretha Franklin, and he, awesome. He just laid down the bass, gave me a free bass line as a favor, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. So yeah, I think in the next week or so, I'm going to have the other guitar player in the band come over, and we're going to lay that down and get it mixed and throw it up and see who salutes. If you want to know more about the band, you can always search. We're on all Spotify and Apple Music and all that stuff. And
what was the name of the band again?
The name of the band is Dame Fortune, Dame Fortune. And Pat says Ace's Kiss. Yeah, Ace is great. I support both. I will always go and see Ace as a solo artist. And, like I said, Kiss is my favorite band. So.
Well, plus you got to give it to Kiss for they tie in the comics perfectly,
They really do.
Yeah.
They do, yeah.
Gene Simmons was a big freak for Marvel Comics.
Yeah, actually.
His outfit's based off of Black Bolt, isn't it? From the Inhumans?
Yeah, Inhumans, Kirby. Yeah, in fact, he thanks Stan Lee and Jack Kirby on the back of his 78 solo album. Yeah, he used to.
Wow.
Yeah, think about it, Johnny. The underneath of his, that
makes sense.
Right out of Black Bolt,
Yeah. Now that you say that makes perfect sense. I'm blown away. My mind is blown.
Yeah, no, he's great. In fact, actually, I did a comic, which if you go to my Facebook profile, you can search through the photos and stuff and find that was a photo comic where I dressed up my son as the little demon, like little Gene Simmons.
Nice.
And it was kind of a pastiche parody of Kiss and The Walking Dead. I call it The Stalking Dead, Little Demon meets The Stalking Dead. And and so I was at a con and I see the guys from Fangoria, and I printed up 25 copies of this book. you know, just to give out to friends and Kiss fans and anybody. If anybody bought any other book, I just give them this one for free. You know,
Yeah.
And the people at Fangoria were like, you know, the head of Fangoria is a big Kiss fan. He would love this. You know, and I go, oh, okay, cool. Well, here, I'll give it to you, and you know, you give it to him, and there we go. And then he contacted me on Facebook. He IM'd me, and he was like, you know, Gene's really interested in this comic that you've done. You know, and I go, really? Oh, that's cool. Well, I said, yeah, hey, I'd love to send him a copy. You know, and he goes, well, Gene would actually like to pay you for a copy. And I said, well, you know, I wouldn't really feel right about that because I'm not charging anybody for it. I'm just, you know, it's something I did for fun, just as a fan, you know. And so I said, just, you know, give me the address of their management, and I'd be happy to send them a copy, you know. And so I sent them a copy of the book and never heard anything from it. I kind of felt like I was, you know, he was trying to entrap me.
Really?
So like a couple weeks later, Gene was doing an autograph session at the local bookstore. And I thought, well, you know, who knows? This is the sort of thing that could have slid through the cracks. I'll just give him another copy of the book, and I'll give him my real comics that I do too, because I know he's a fan, you know. And so he's looking at my real comics, and he goes, I don't know about this. I don't know about this. And he goes, and he points to the little demon thing and goes, now this I know about. And he puts his arm around me and he goes, careful you don't get yourself sued. You know? and I go, whoa, you know, hey, I'm not making any money. I'm just doing it out of love. So the only person that's going to sue me is you.
He's always thinking business.
Yeah, always. Was that Kerry O'Quinn that you spoke to from Fangoria?
No, it's the editor-in-chief, Chris somebody. I don't know. We're still Facebook friends. I have to look it up.
Gotcha. Yeah, I ran into Kerry O'Quinn. He was one of the older generation editors-in-chiefs of, or even creator of Fangoria. Okay. So, and we just, such a nice guy. We were just walking through Gaslamp after San Diego one year, and
nice.
He's like, hey, we're going for pizza. You want to come? We were complete strangers walking down the street. And he just looped us in like we were anybody else. It was so cool.
Yeah, all those guys are like that. When we used to do Fango conventions, the publisher, I think his name's Tony Timpone.
Okay.
He had a drink with all the fans in the lobby. It was like, you know, like it was nothing. We just talked horror movies. It was great.
That's so cool.
Guys, all those guys are awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so hey Johnny, before we go, you got anything to promote or you know?
Nothing new that I haven't, you know, made, you know, any breakthroughs on, but I'm sure in the future I'll probably have more things to talk about. One thing I did want to mention is that I'm now a big fan of Tinseltown. I love the book. I love the character. I don't know how you'd feel about it, but I'd love to see this become a movie or a TV series at some point in the future. You know what I mean? It's so cinematic reading it that I felt like it lends itself so very easily to be adapted. And I just hope one day I'm at a San Diego and you guys are in Hall H talking about the next comic to movie adaptation or TV to movie. Movie comic to TV adaptation.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say no for sure.
For sure.
I agree. I think it's a good untapped. You know, like you don't see stories like that much.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So like, I think it would be a great series myself. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to share. Is I'm a big fan now. Love it. I encourage anybody who knows me and for my work, I encourage people to go check it out and read it.
Cool, man.
Yeah, I'll be ordering your other book soon because I want to check out that vampire one. That sounds cool.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, I think you'll like it.
Yeah, I definitely want to check that out. So I'll get that off your Etsy store soon.
Yeah.
So and then before we sign off, I'll just say to everybody, go check out the Indiegogo from Mighty Mascots.
Yeah,
the next 3 issues. Help me fund it and pay the artists.
Yep. And check out Abacab Studios.
Right.
Yes.
And Tinseltown Losing the Light at alternaaccess.com. You can order issue 1 right now or at your local comic book store.
Yeah, and I think Peter said that those came in today, I think, right?
Oh, great. I knew they're coming in either today or tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, so they should be shipping soon.
Yeah.
So anyone that's ordering it now should be getting it within the next couple weeks. So I'll have to I was getting all my comics through DCBS and like ordering all the Alterna stuff through Diamond and stuff. But now that I pulled out of Diamond, I'll have to wait till I see Peter at a convention so I can get the next Tinseltown miniseries. So by then I'll probably have all 5 issues out, you know. So
right. Let's hope not.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, Dave, thanks for coming on the show. Johnny, is always
my pleasure, guys.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
We'll
Thank
have you on again down the road. You know, maybe when the last issue of Tinseltown comes out, we can kind of do a wraparound episode. You know.
Absolutely.
Cool like that.
I look forward to it.
All right, guys. Well, have a good night, and we'll talk to you later.
All right. Take care.
Bye.